This is a recording which is trying to help you to realize how important learning your specifications are. And the specifications are these things. They are the GCSE, and I call them specs. So whenever I use the word specs, that's what I'm talking about. They are the things that the board wants you to know about. And you've got two sets. You've got the core science, and you've got Science A and the additional science. And you can see here that it tells you everything that you need to know. And the one that I'd like you to particularly function on is not this introduction about why choosing AQA, because that's more for teaching things. It's the subject content, okay? And it tells you in unbelievable detail about what you need to know. And there are two things that they tell you. And these two things are utterly, utterly crucial. The first is, and I don't know if you really have sat down with the specs and looked at them. The first is, they tell you facts. They tell you facts you need to know. So if you learn these specs, you learn a huge number of facts. And that's important by itself. But then they tell you how you are going to be examined on it as well, which is great. So for Unit 1 Biology, and there's Unit 1 Physics and Chemistry as well, it takes you through all of the topics, and so B11 is keeping healthy, okay? And this early preamble, which means introduction, tells you the kind of things they want you to know, the kind of things they want you to know. And then we go into genuine, and I mean genuine detail. And if you look here, it starts telling you answers. I just want to say that again. It's telling you answers. And if you think of the questions as you go through, you can realize exactly what they want you to say. So for example, let's take A here. Okay, a healthy diet contains the right balance of different foods you need and the right amount of energy. What is a healthy diet? 2 marks. A healthy diet is the right balance of different foods to give you the right amount of energy. They told you that. What does a healthy diet consist of? I wonder if they might tell us this answer. Carbohydrates, fats and proteins are used by the body to release energy and to build cells. Mineral ions and vitamins are needed in small amounts for healthy functioning of the body. Ah, carbohydrates, fats, proteins, mineral ions and vitamins. I'd also like to add water there. So if you look at this, you've got carbohydrates and fats and proteins. You've got mineral ions and vitamins, and that's rubbish, lining, I'm sorry. And they are, if you pick out the facts, these are the things that they're telling you. Okay. What does malnourishment mean, I wonder? A person is malnourished if their diet is not balanced. Brilliant. These are answers, guys. Okay. What could happen to someone who is malnourished? They could either be overweight or underweight. There it is. And an unbalanced diet may also lead to deficiency diseases or conditions such as type 2 diabetes. Okay. Deficiency diseases, I would know, and I would ask you to know, just because everyone should know it, is from the pirate days. Scurvy dog, is because people didn't get enough vitamin C, and that's because vegetables and fruit would rot, which in vitamin C is found in particularly citrus fruits, would rot by the time they'd been out to sea for a few weeks, and they had very poor preservatives. So scurvy as a result of lack of vitamin C, and something called rickets, which is weak bones if you have lack of vitamin D. Hence, vitamin D can be seen as being required for bones and teeth. Okay, so automatically here we've got a situation where we have got facts, and they can build the definitions that we need. The other thing is, let's just look at this on a strategic basis. What is a healthy diet? 2 marks. If you know these specs, you know that the healthy diet is they want you to say that you have, my perfect answer to what a healthy diet would be to say that it is a right balance of the different food groups you need, which are carbohydrates, fats, proteins, mineral ions, and vitamins. I think that's an absolute perfect answer. Okay. Look how quickly I was able to give that answer. If you know that's what they want, then you're not waffling on going, a healthy diet is when you eat lots of vegetables. Where's the word vegetables in here? It's when you don't have too many fatty foods. Now what you're saying is right balance of foods, but you're saying it a roundabout way. Vegetables and not so many fatty foods. But that may not give you the marks. They want you to say a healthy diet contains the right balance of different foods you need and the right amount of energy, carbohydrates, fats and proteins, mineral ions and vitamins. Okay? So can you see what learning the specs has done here, guys? It has given you the answer to the questions that they're going to ask. This is all you need to know. Okay? And it's important that you use this tool. Okay? Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about in terms of these specs is cross-referencing and not looking at these specs as a kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 type way. I would like you to look at these specs and understand all of the biology you've learnt this year. So let's take B here. A person loses mass when the energy content of the food taken in is less than the amount of energy expended by the body. That basically means too many calories goes to a really fat person, and if you have too few, you're going to be really thin. And so you need to stay the same weight, you need to effectively take in the same amount of energy as you burn. Okay. Exercise increases the amount of energy expended by the body. Now this is the cross-referencing. Exercise. Now you know exercise burns energy. How does it do that? Where does the energy come from? Well, it comes from respiration. And so this here, we could easily cross-reference with respiration. And when I put two crosses like that, I'm talking about cross-referencing. It means referring to another part of the syllabus. You know that glucose plus oxygen goes to carbon dioxide and water, which are the waste products, but we get the energy from it, and energy's moved for movement. So the more that your muscles move, the more energy they're going to need, and the more respiration that will take place. Okay? So when you see a statement like energy increases the amount of, so exercise increases the amount of energy expended by the body, don't just read it, understand it. And that is the reason why all of these things are important, that we cross-reference. Okay? So, if I take away that, the rate at which all chemical reactions in the cells of the body are carried out, which is called the metabolic rate. Question perhaps. What is the metabolic rate in the body? The metabolic rate is the rate at which all chemical reactions in the cells of the body are carried out. That's absolutely rubbish underlining. See that? Actually, I can square that. That's better. There. The rate at which all the chemical reactions in the cells of the body are carried out. That's the answer. If you knew that, you just nailed it. Okay? So, it varies with the amount of activity you do and the proportion of muscle to fat in your body. Cross-reference respiration, because we know that it varies with the amount of muscle you have. Well, if you've got more muscle, you've got more respiration going on because the muscles are screaming for energy. Okay, that's why people who are doing loads of bodybuilding or are very big eat more food, because they need more energy to sustain their big muscles. Okay, the more activity you do, as we said before, you're using your energy more, you're using your muscles more, there's more movement, you are doing respiration, which requires energy. Now, here is the next cross-referencing that I'd like to talk about, and it's important here. It's this section here. Starting from here, metabolic rate may be affected by inherited factors. Now, how you get your inheritance is important here. You have a sperm and you have an egg, and they have both got 23 chromosomes in, and they come together in fertilization to form a zygote. Okay, this is cross-referencing to the genetics. Now, in this 23 chromosomes, we might have an allele which says slow metabolic rate. So remember, a chromosome, let's just get rid of this, a chromosome is a long piece of DNA, and on it we have lots of genes. And each of those genes will code for a specific characteristic or a specific protein. Okay, so we might have eye color, or we might have height. Okay, or we might have skin color. Okay, and remember, so a gene is a section of DNA that codes for a characteristic. Remember this though, that the version of the gene is called an allele. And when the sperm and the egg fuse, they donate their 23 chromosomes. So there'll be 23 of these in the new baby, 23 pairs. And let's imagine this one here. Let's make this one just a slightly different colour. Let's say this one is metabolic rate. There's two versions here. There's this version, say from the dad, and there's this version from the mum. If this version from the dad is slow, and slow is dominant to fast, then the child will be born with a slower metabolic rate. Or maybe there's a slight codominance, which means that they both are expressed, and as a result there is a slower metabolic rate. But can you see here, this statement, metabolic rate may be affected by inherited factors, here, actually opens up a whole amount of cross-referencing to genetics. Okay? And so the key words that I want you to remember from this little section I've done here is allele is a version of a gene. A gene is a section of DNA on a chromosome. This is a chromosome. That's a chromosome. They're made of DNA. And you inherit 23 chromosomes from your mother in her egg, 23 chromosomes from your father in his sperm, and they line up, and the actual features that you'll have in a human will be as a result of which alleles are expressed. And so this is a roundabout way, of course, but the cross-referencing is so crucial. Metabolic rate may be inherited by inherited factors. Okay, so in terms of our specs so far, I'd like you I'm obviously not going to go through all the specs, but I'd like you to see what we're doing here. We are going through and we are really living these specs. Okay, I'm just going to finish off by talking about D here. Okay. Inherited factors also affect our health. For example, cholesterol. Okay. Cholesterol. Now, cholesterol levels are affected in your life, there's no doubt, by your diet. Okay. But the amount of cholesterol you might have is also dependent upon your propensity, which means your likelihood to have higher cholesterol levels. So once again, if we were to think about it, we've got a sperm, we've got an egg, we've got 23, they form the zygote, and in that 23 there might be an allele, which is a version of the cholesterol likelihood gene, which says high likelihood, and that is inherited by the zygote, and that would suggest that that zygote has a slightly higher chance as a result of one of the alleles in these chromosomes of having a higher cholesterol level. Okay, once again, can you see when we read these statements, we just look at what the biology is behind it, not just what the words say. So we've got two types of learning here. There is the learning with using the specs, where we are looking at the facts. A balanced diet is, these are the proportions of a balanced diet. Proteins, carbohydrates, fats, minerals, okay, vitamins. And then there is thinking about your specs to work out where other things fit in. And if you know this, guys, you literally are going to nail the whole exam. And that is the truth. Now, there's one last thing I would like to say about using these specs. And it's this. If I take you to just looking for one here that I could see you get into trouble with. It's very common for people to use the internet and YouTube. I think these are great things to use. But once again, the last thing is use your specs to work out what you do and don't need to know. Okay. Here we take vaccination. Now, people are vaccinated by a dead or inactive version of a pathogen, which is a bacteria or a virus, usually can be fungi, being injected into the body, and your body forming its normal defense mechanisms against it. So when it meets the live dangerous one later, it is able to create a response which is much faster and bigger and wipe out the whole of the dangerous pathogen. Okay. Now, that we need to know. But it says here, additional guidance. Details of vaccination schedules and side effects associated with specific vaccines are not required. Now, this is the last way that I'd like you to think about your specs. They tell you what you don't need to know. They give you this guidance which tells you how you need to learn and what you don't need to waste time on. So look at this one. Knowledge of the development of resistance in bacteria is limited to the fact that pathogens mutate, producing resistant strains. You only need to know here that bacteria mutate and are resistant. That's all you need to know. Okay? Knowledge of the structure of bacteria and viruses is not required down here. So you don't need to know about the structure of bacteria and viruses. Okay. Candidates will be given data to work from. So can you see they're probably going to give you a graph or something like that. So when we're using our specs, we need to try as hard as we can to not only learn from the facts that they give, which are incredible, but also use them to cross-reference as we go through the syllabus, and lastly to see how they're going to examine us.